What's going on, everybody? Jackson Fuller here alongside Owen Hassell. Time to discuss this Friday's football slate. And Owen, I'm very excited. We actually have conference games to discuss this week. The wins and losses will count in the conference races for a title coming down at the end of the year.
Yeah, well, obviously for teams, every game counts, especially with playoffs and that going on. But yes, when you're in conference play, I think the team that can really benefit for this new slate is Hager. Mm-hmm. I'm leading that right into you to the next part.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think when you look at it, it's a fresh start for a lot of teams. Some teams will play a lot easier schedules, and some teams will play a lot more difficult schedules now compared to what they were doing in the non-conference slate. But you're right. Let's start with Hager. That's the game I was at on Friday night against Purnell Sweat. They eked out a 15-10 victory with a lot of thanks to senior running back Brady DeHaas. And the Vikings now are home again. That's got to be a good feeling for them. Another second straight home game after not having one for 5 weeks. And they'll be hosting South Brunswick to open play in the Mideastern Conference. And the Cougars are 3-1 for the second straight year heading into MEC play. They whooped up on Lakewood pretty good last week. I think this is an opportunity for Hager to try and find some of its mojo back. We kind of thought that was going to happen last week against Purnell Sweat. And it turns out Purnell Sweat is the same story as the past few years over there. They've got a pretty dang good defense, and their offense is just not quite able to match that. And that kind of kept Purnell Sweat, the Rams, in the game. But in the end, Hager's, their offensive line, their defensive line were just too talented. They wore on Purnell Sweat and pulled out the victory. But this week, you want, if you're Hager and you want to contend for an MEC title this year and win a third straight, you have to put up a great performance against South Brunswick and start getting your mojo back.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like last week to where even I thought Hager was going to struggle for a while because it's about getting that winning feeling this year,
right?
Not last year before. And it did take time. I think it took more time maybe than at least you and I figured. You were at the game, of course, and now you've gotten that win out of the way, and the players can get that little bit of extra confidence. Right. And now it's conference, and it's so much easier for coaches and kids, everyone around you to go, well, you're 0-0 now, you're 0-0, it's new season, all that kind of talk. And at the same time, this team is still getting its identity. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're gathering?
Well, I think they've got to get guys back. Rex Hardy, their best receiver, was out Friday night, and the passing game struggled yet again. Jack Thomas, who's their second string running back and isn't out, is hopefully going to come back this week for them. He needs to come back when your starter, your first string running back entering the season. Jordan Rickey's done for the year now. I think Hager needs to start. They need to find their identity, and they need to figure out what they're great at on offense, and then rely on that. On Friday night, it was running the ball up the middle with Brady DeHaas. I don't know if that's going to be a recipe for success against some of the teams like West Brunswick and New Hanover. It might. Maybe that offensive line is good enough, but so far this season, they haven't been consistent enough. And Brady DeHaas ran for 250 yards, but Hager still only scored 15 points. On the flip side, South Brunswick, 3-1. Last year they were 3-1 and had a lot of confidence heading into a game against Topsail because the schedule was kind of out of whack. So their first game was going to be against Topsail, and they got blown out. I don't think South Brunswick. I'm sure they're confident. Their coaches and players are preaching that they think they can come down to the Shipyard and get a win. I don't know if that's really possible for them at this point, but they've got to be competitive and show that there are signs that they're getting closer to some of these other teams in the Mideastern Conference.
But they've gone on the road and won.
Yeah.
South Brunswick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I realize this is a different scenario. And yes, the mental part of it is, well, it's Hager. You haven't just lost to Hager the past couple of years, been absolutely beat up. But why would that be the case this year? Because you're looking at what Hager has done. Yeah. They've been beat up a bit themselves. You've got to think every other team in the Mideastern Conference is beginning to lick their chops a little bit.
Maybe not lick their chops, but there's got to be a little bit more belief.
They got to smell. They smell what the MEC is cooking, and it could be that other teams have a chance to make the recipe. I'm trying all the jingles I can. I'm really coming up with little to nothing. But if you're South Brunswick, bottom line is you should have some confidence. You should believe now more than ever you can hang with Hager. Yes, beating, maybe not but hanging in, and it's a funny thing how if you just hang around, it's exactly what Pernell Sweat did this past week.
Absolutely. And you mentioned South Brunswick. Have they gone on the road? They've played all 4 games on the road so far because those turf fields aren't ready yet.
I wasn't quite sure. I wanted to make absolutely sure. The turf
field. Their first home game I think will be next week, and talk about Road Warriors. So let's move on. The game that I'll be covering on Friday night out in Hampstead, Laney at Topsail. 2 teams that completely different storylines when you look at their 2019 so far. Laney, winless, played a very tough schedule. The defense has kept them in games. Topsail, undefeated, an easy schedule. The offense is just blowing people out. But when you think about this matchup, last year it was maybe the game of the season. Jose Arellano makes a 40-yard field goal. Topsail pulls off an upset, wins 22-20 on the road. I think these teams are pretty evenly matched. And while Topsail's got all the momentum right now, the Pirates think they can win the MEC. Cody Wallace is playing some brilliant football. If you think you can win the MEC, this is a game at home you have to win. And if you're Laney, this is a game you talk to yourselves about. Oh, well, we've just played a really tough schedule. We've got some young guys on offense. Well, if that's the case, this is a game you win against a 3A school when you're the bigger 4A school and you've got some more athletes historically. I'm fascinated to see what happens in this game.
Yeah, the whole 4A, 3A, 2A thing, has it applied that much to Laney the past couple of years? They've lost to Wallace Rose Hill when Wallace Rose Hill's 1A, and I realize Wallace Rose Hill's wasn't your typical 1A or even 2A, but still beating you like a drum. So I don't put too much stock into that when it comes to a team like Laney that's not a traditional top 10 in the state 4A school, anything like that. Establishing the run game, Benny Burns.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the biggest development Friday in that game, because you know what Cody Wallace can do, and you know what the receivers can do. Yes, they can put points up, but can they establish enough of that run game now with Noah LaValle out? Should have been able to do that in non-conference, obviously did. Teams that you can beat, you've beaten the last couple of years. Now it's Laney. I think it's going to be another close game. I don't know if it's going to be the barely sneak in field goal, 40-some yards, last second crowd pleaser for Topsail.
But I think I agree. I think it'll be a close game, and you're right. I think it'll be interesting to see what the Laney defense does. Do they say, hey, we believe in our athletes. The Laney secondary is normally a strength and one of the better units across the MEC. Do they say, hey, we believe in our athletes against your receivers, let's load the box and stop the run? Or do they say, we're going to make sure you can't throw the ball on us. Can your front 5 block our front 4 and run the football on us? I think, again, I haven't seen either of these teams yet, and last year was such a good game. I'm really excited to just see how this one kind of shakes out, because both of these teams, their seasons can go a lot of different directions from here. Let's move on. New Hanover making the trip to Leland to face North Brunswick. Both teams are 3-1, and I was very wrong about North Brunswick against Swansboro last week. I thought Swansboro was kind of going to stay undefeated, and the Scorpions came out, and I thought it would at least be a close game. The Scorpions just destroyed them. They got Quasi Clark back last week, their leading rusher from a year ago. Confidence has to be high over in Leland. Brian Davis is known for being a program builder, and it seems like he's got North Brunswick headed in the right direction.
And once again, another situation like South Brunswick at Hager is, this is a program that you traditionally not just lost to New Hanover and Hager, you've been absolutely beaten up, running clock.
Last year, I wanted to do
that's right.
Last year in a rainstorm, 14-7.
Yeah, where North Brunswick said, hey, we'll play you an absolute monsoon because we might have a chance of winning this thing in the monsoon. And, well, it almost worked out for North Brunswick. But otherwise, it's been an overmatched situation. Now you go into it like, I got some younger guys, we got some players back, just beat an undefeated team on their field. Why wouldn't you be? We keep using that word confidence so much in this, but it's so true.
It's a huge part of developing, I wanted to say confidence again, but developing, your football team early in the season is building that confidence and having that belief. And, that's something that the past couple of years, a good example is Topsail of, running through the non-conference slate and being undefeated and not playing those good teams. They've had that confidence entering the MEC. 2 years ago, it didn't really matter. They weren't ready. But last year, that confidence, I think, really mattered for Topsail because they felt like they belonged up there. and that while they still lost to Hager and Hanover, they took care of business against the other teams. But back to New Hanover and North Brunswick, I think, can New Hanover establish the running game? They've done it against two lesser teams. They did it in a sense against North Brunswick. They weren't able to really get the running game going against Jack Britt. Jaheim Marshall broke off a long run on a jet sweep on the first play of the game. Otherwise, I think Jack Britt did a pretty good job. This is a game where if Dylan Dimmick and New Hanover football and the future of New Hanover football, they want to be able to run the ball really well against these teams like North Brunswick, South Brunswick, and Topsail and establish their strength up front. I think that's the key. If they can run the ball consistently well against North Brunswick, then I think New Hanover should be in the driver's seat for a comfortable win.
If you're very competitive, which obviously that's what these guys are, they want to win. There is no such thing as a good loss. However, if there was some type of a silver lining, good loss-esh thing, it would have been that Jack Britt game where it's a 4A school, a good 4A school, undefeated, comes in. You've led most of that game. You lose like that in overtime. These players get that taste in their mouth early in the year that you like to think will stay with them in closer games going to the conference season, that you find a way to win because we know what it was like to lose on our field like that and we should have won. I think it can be a positive. I think 4 or 5 weeks now we can look back at that Jack Britt and go, wow, that's when New Hanover really just went ahead when they had a chance, stomped on the neck, so to speak. To make sure a win is going to be a win.
And it doesn't get easy. Next week, New Hanover plays Topsail, but really, every week in the MEC, I think there's going to be some good matchups, and that's part of the reason that I'm so excited about the conference this season. Is there's no clear and out favorite right now. I think you've got 3 or 4 teams that legitimately believe they can win a conference championship. One of those teams is West Brunswick. Let's just briefly touch on this game. They're hosting Ashley. The first game for West Brunswick on their home turf in Shallotte should be a comfortable win for the Trojans, who are the only undefeated team heading into MEC play. That defense has been terrific all year. Ashley 0-4. There are signs of some progress within that program right now, but they're still a long way behind some of the other teams in the league.
I want to apologize to the Topsail people because Topsail's also undefeated.
God, I make a mistake.
See, one
mistake
more time,
every week.
It happens, and really, I told Jackson beforehand, don't do this. And he already said, I'm not going to mention Topsail's undefeated because I don't care about Topsail. And see, that's unfair.
That's not true. That's why I'm coming to see you in Hampstead. I think I already mentioned earlier in this video that Topsail was undefeated.
You did. I'm just let's have a good time. But yeah, that's gonna be very exciting. Obviously, at West Brunswick, and you're bringing in Ashley, but you've got to be so cautious about being overhyped. Should I use confident again? Overconfident?
Overconfident, overzealous.
And which can happen because if you're Ashley, it's sort of the 0-0 for them too in conference play. And yes, you're trying to pick out those little victories. I think we've said before, if you're Coach Wilson Helms and the Screaming, just these little things that you can see that you can build on. And I think this is going to be another case for that. Obviously, you don't play to lose. You're trying to win, but what can you see to build on in this game when obviously you're not the favorite? West Brunswick should be a 15-20 point favorite.
Right. And both teams are off on Friday of the previous week. So West Brunswick's got to be itching to get a home game playing in the MEC. They've got goals of winning that conference this year. You're right. I think they'll be a little overhyped, but I think it'll be a good kind of.
Can't overlook anybody.
No, absolutely
just can't.
And finally, let's touch on Wallace Rose Hill. They're finally making that trip that we've been kind of looking forward to all year to face Wake Forest. Should be an interesting game. I don't know how much fun it'll be to watch, but I think I'm really intrigued to see how the Bulldogs do down there and how guys like Cameron Dalrymple and Kanye Roberts do against one of the best teams that the state of North Carolina has to offer in Wake Forest.
Well, Wake Forest is undefeated this year.
No, they're not undefeated this year. They are not. They lost their first game to Cardinal Gibbons.
They can lose. It's not like it's impossible of a feat. Yes, we understand the numbers game could end up being the difference because that's the reason why one's a 4A and one's a 2A. You can see those things happen, but we just talked about throwing out those types of things for Laney, but then I'm just contradicting myself because I said Laney's not one of the top teams.
You also mentioned Laney's not one of the top teams.
So I'm really kind of just jumping over my words here.
But Wake Forest is absolutely one of the top teams. I mean, they feels like they're winning or playing a state championship every single year, and it feels like that too for Wallace Rose Hill. But
You just don't want guys to get hurt.
Right.
I mean, in any game, of course, but especially something like this.
and especially the last non-conference game of the season, and getting ready for play in that East Central Conference, which looks tough once again for Wallace Rose Hill with Clinton and East Duplin just kind of waiting there. But should be a fun Friday night of high school football. Looking forward to seeing how the Bulldogs perform down in Wake Forest. So again, as always, follow along on Twitter at Star News Varsity, Facebook.com/Star News Varsity. Didn't mention it, but we're covering 3 games this week, and the first 3 that we talked about. As I said, I will be at Topsail. Joey Chandler will be in Hager. She'll be at Hager, where the Vikings are hosting South Brunswick, and Noah Powers will be in Leland, where North Brunswick is hosting New Hanover. So we'll have a lot of great football coverage for you this coming Friday night and into Saturday morning. Again, exciting times. I'm glad to start covering some local teams versus local teams, and should be a fun race throughout the season for the Mideastern Conference. If you missed it, look online. It's either published already or coming later this week. Our Mideastern Conference power rankings. Owen, myself, and a couple other people here on the Star News ranked the teams 1 through 8 heading into the first week, and let us know how much you hate our assessment of the Mideastern Conference. Thank you all for watching as always, and we'll check back in and see you next week.
Stay confident.